Oh, howdy and hello everyone. I'm just looking at this thing. Kind of smells like it came from a New York dumpster, and I don't really know where I got it from. But if there's one thing we can be certain of, it looks like a... Oh, why don't you look at that? Ah, hell yeah, I get to call this thing a hippo.
Weird Locomotives, Metra's lifeline.
Locomotives, or some form of it, is something basically every train needs. Without it, you've got just a bunch of big metal cubes that can roll around with free will.
But of course, some locomotives are more popular than others, and some look like ducks. So today I'll be going over a handful of weird locomotives in no particular order, just ones that stand out that I want to laugh at.
First up, we've got EMD's answer to the Charger, till they got sad and left.
The F-125 was only ever sold to Metrolink in Southern California, but believe it or not, this thing was actually really close to beating out the Charger and becoming the face of the next chapter of US rail locomotives.
To sum it up, EMD was going up against MPI and Siemens to provide IDOT, Caltrans, and WashDOT a new locomotive that can meet the Tier 4 standards and also be high speed. EMD was already developing the F-125 for Metrolink at this time, so they decided to just offer it up to IDOT, and then Siemens won, and EMD threw a fit.
Yeah, so because Siemens used some wrong equations and just in general made the Charger seem far more capable than it actually was, EMD wrote this massive protest letter to IDOT, who was the leader of the whole order, and IDOT essentially just told them to shut up and sit down.
And so, because of that, only Metrolink would ever receive the F-125s, and after that, EMD either completely gave up or just couldn't put up much of a fight against Siemens, as not only has EMD not sold any F-125 since, but they also haven't sold any passenger locomotives in general since the F-125.
But looking past that, the F-125 was kinda a mess in and of itself at first, the specifics of which would take too long to go over, but thankfully the F-125s on Metrolink seem to be doing fine for the most part. This locomotive also reminds me of a duck, but that's a 2-hour conversation that can't happen right now.
The story of the HHP-8s is by far one of the most well-known failures of European locomotives on American soil.
The HHP-8s were designed by the same manufacturer as the much more successful Acela 1 train sets and had a very similar design to the Acela 1 train sets. However, the difference here was now it looked like something you'd find in a zoo.
The HHP-8s were designed to go alongside the pre-existing AEM-7 locomotives to help alleviate the E60 locomotives which were about to go out of service as they were pretty unreliable.
While the E60s had the problem of being built like tanks, the HHP-8s had the issue of being horsepower tryhards. They had the same top speed as the AEM-7s, that being 135 miles per hour, but these things output 8,000 horsepower. Yeah, that little nugget right there outputted as much horsepower as a goddamn tugboat and could hit 135 miles per hour.
The high horsepower was pretty much these locomotives' main fatal flaw, as these little chicken nuggets had so much horsepower that they'd essentially tear themselves apart then and there.
The exact issues were pretty hard to verify for sure, but it appears wheel slip, overheating, and software faults were all things they saw. In the end, only 21 were ever produced, with 15 going to Amtrak and 6 going to Mark.
However, the HHP-8s did receive a bit of service after their 2015 service end. And then Amtrak realized the HHP-8s were just a complete lost cause.
So Amtrak decided to convert a few HHP-8s into HHP-Cs. This would remove their power and turn them into essentially nuggets without the chicken. However, somehow not even these could run properly, and so after only a few months of service, Amtrak canceled the program, once again leaving the HHP-8 to be the one frozen hippo-shaped nugget dropped in the back of the fridge.
If the F-125 is an off-brand Charger, then the HSP-46 is a Charger you'd find on Wish, which is kind of funny because both predate the Charger.
The HSP-46 is a group of locomotives whose main feature is a progressive gait disorder. Wrong HSP.
The HSP-46s were only ever sold to the MBTA, and only 40 were ever produced. This is most likely because MPI lost the order that would eventually become the Chargers.
The MBTA initially didn't even want MPI to build their new locomotives, but the federal government forced them thanks to the Buy America Act. And so the MBTA reluctantly shuffled up to MPI, and the order went about as well as you'd expect.
These things arrived with issues, and to my knowledge still have issues to this day, and just in general look like kind of a less refined F-125 and are just kind of square.
These locomotives are nearing their midlife refurbs and still run alongside the much older F-40s, MP-36s that I think ran away while MPI was looking, and 19 Canadian Spies.
This category contains a bunch of examples of why you shouldn't let a GP40 obsessed foamer into the locomotive design shop.
First up, we have the GP40 FH-2. This, I don't even know what this is. You've got the standard cap at the front, but then where you'd usually have the standard body, you have this lopsided full-width body, making this thing look really stupid.
Remember those early AI images where you thought you knew what you were looking at, and then you looked a bit closer and you realized you had no idea what the hell was going on? This is the locomotive equivalent of that.
21 of these were built and were sold to Metro North and NJ Transit. As of the modern day, only a handful of these still run on Metro North. Next up, we have the GP40 WH-2. This is literally just a stumpy SDP-40F. And this wasn't a rebuild either. Mark ordered these directly from EMD. No rebuild in sight. And then Sunrail happened.
It's always when Sunrail happens.
So, because the southern states would rather telescope their heads straight up their own asses before even considering helping their own commuter rails, Sunrail, the commuter rail that began in 2014, had to purchase the GP40s from Mark and had MPI rebuild them into MP32PH-Qs. What did the GP40 do to deserve this? Picture this, you're a commuter railroad, you need a lot of locomotives, and for the first while of your existence, you buy a gargantuan fleet of equipment from the same manufacturer. However, at some point, this manufacturer stops making prime movers for passenger locomotives. Well, that, my friend, is the exact situation that happened with Chicago's Metra and EMD, which has led to the most mystifying purchase I've seen.
In 2019, Metra ordered 19 SD70 Mac H locomotives, which are literally just freight-owned SD70 locomotives, but refurbished for passenger rail. These things look straight out of Amtrak's freight locomotive era.
To think the modern form of these are younger than all of the state-owned SC44s, all of the F-125s, HSPs, F-59PHIs, and P-42s showcases how this is a step in the wrong direction. Metra, do you need some therapy or something? Cause you're grieving over the loss of EMD prime movers is becoming increasingly obvious as the rest of every commuter rail modernizes.
Well hey, as long as they don't purchase battery EMUs, I think they should be fine.
I don't even know why I bother anymore.